Well, good morning. And you got 20 minutes of silence there, because as usual, the video that was supposed to come up didn't. So let's remind you that last night was the the district council's first meeting of the new council that was elected just about 2 weeks ago, and an interesting evening it was. If you would care to look on Mirador Television's Facebook page, you'll see that I spoke to the Deputy Mayor of Lewes Town Council, Stephen Catlin, immediately after the meeting and got his views. And his view was that the opposition, because the council is made up of 19 Conservatives and then 9 Greens, 8 Lib Dems, etc., with a couple of Labours, 2 or 3 Labours and a couple of Independents, and the Alliance shot themselves in the foot. the Lib Dems abstained on some things. They got their man in as the chairman of the council. I'm not going to go along with this talking about inanimate objects. The chairman of the council, and then they left the door wide open for the leader to be Isabel Lillington, who is a Conservative. So the Conservatives won the day. They got the important posts because it's the leader who actually, and I've described it as an iniquitous system, who is the cabinet leader. And she named 4 Conservatives to be on the cabinet with her. Ho, 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 what a great surprise. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually be governed by the Conservatives again, just much as we were in the last 4 years, and it'll be interesting to see what they do. I did speak to Ruth O'Keefe, for whom I've got some considerable regard, and she said, well, at least the committee system is coming back to some extent. But as long as this iniquitous and ludicrous cabinet system exists, brought in by Tony Blair, would you guess, in 2000, then I'm afraid that much as we would like it not to be, that the position of the rest of the councillors is more or less irrelevant. They can be on a committee and they can make recommendations, but the power lies now with the Conservatives again. And with all due respect to the opposition, they had a golden opportunity to get together, and they didn't. At least they didn't for the important part of the meeting. Then I think it was the Green Party asked for a recess, so that they could all go into their little sessions and try to just sort something out. Seeing disaster in the wings, no doubt. And they didn't. Well, they did. The second half, the Conservatives did not get it all their own way, and that is encouraging, to say the least, because when you've got one group that wield power, you haven't got democracy. I don't blame them. They've got power. What the heck? We've got power. Let's do our thing, chaps. We don't have to worry about anybody else. The trouble is that 9 times out of 10, it's the citizen. It's the voter that they don't have to worry about. And it's a very sad situation. So at least there is some semblance of democracy. Now, when I first got there last night, I thought, my goodness me, it's Muppet Time again. Because the end of last season, the end of the last council before the election, was Muppet Time. The leader pulled the strings and up went the hands. Well, it started out that way this time, and I do have some video of it which I will put up later in the day because it needs editing, otherwise it bore the pants off you. But up go the hands. Whoopee! And then I think that a bit of reality started to creep in, that if we wanted a decent council, which they all promise on the hustings, of course, and then when they get into this nice, cosy cabal, they start to do their own things. And I think that the reality sank in, that unless some sense was brought to it and some democratic process, that we were going to have disaster. And of course, the dear old executive is sitting in the wings, loving disasters, because that means that they won't have political interference. But anyway, Isabel Lillington is the council leader, and Stephen Gorton his name just vaguely escapes me at the moment. I will actually get it right. I keep wanting to say Gauntlet, but I don't think he's that. Gorton, who is a Liberal Democrat, and at least the chairman is a Liberal Democrat. And perhaps what we can do is we can hope that there will be a balance. But in many ways, the chairman is more or less a ceremonial figure, and doesn't have the power that the leader does. And the opposition gave it away. They gave it away. This is quite incredible. I've come here this morning because actually, you see, I'm at the castle, and in many ways, to me, this castle signifies political democracy. You know, democracy didn't start with this castle. It was a Norman castle. But the king's men were routed from this castle in the Battle of Lewes in 1264, when the barons defeated the king. Right here, right where we're standing this very moment. A few heads and some blood was spilled right behind me and up on that castle. And what happened as a result of the Battle of Lewes was we got some form of democratic government. It wasn't really democracy as we understand it. Excuse me if it wasn't democracy at all. It was just a sharing of power by the king with a group of barons who formed, to all intents and purposes, what became a parliament. But it was important because it was the first spark of doing away with the divine right of kings, that the king was not all-powerful because he was put there by God. The barons were in there having a little chat, and even though religious fervour was much more than it is today, in those days, is nonetheless they were willing to test the will of God and see if they could get a piece of the action, which they did. So I always feel that if I really want to think about democracy, I come up here to this castle. It's not the biggest castle or the best preserved in the United Kingdom, but it is a lovely symbol of the fact that in Lewes we have, of all other towns in the United Kingdom, been so democratic. We gave rise to Tom Paine and the rights of man, who went off and, mind you, he lost us a chunk of territory by going off and fomenting the American, or either we call it War of Independence or we can call it the American Revolution, whichever. The trouble is he came back and got involved with Robespierre in France, and that destroyed his credibility as far as the establishment were concerned here. That was a bit close to home. Nobody wanted that sort of revolution in England. I mean, the dear old Scarlet Pimpernel was busy bringing all the various people back from France to stop them having their heads cut off, and we weren't going to put any of that sort of nonsense here, and quite rightly so. But the fact is that we can get ourselves into a bit of a muck. Now we have in Westminster, and now I'm going to watch very closely how Isabel Linington and her four acolytes behave, because there are some issues, some real issues here. First of all, the cabinet system itself. Will they try to reform? My guess is that already it's very difficult to put any sort of reform in place because it was voted down when it was introduced in the last council. I questioned one of the councillors and said, look, well, you know, if the leader, if the cabinet decided that they should be reformed, couldn't they reform it faster? The answer is yes, of course, but they're not going to, are they? You hand somebody a slice of power and they're hardly likely to turn around and throw it back in your face. So I think that we can expect that the cabinet system is going to work. The next one is this merger with Eastbourne, which has turned out to be a complete and utter disaster. I mean, I said to one councillor, have you ever tried, E.T., call home, E.T. would still be here. If you've ever tried to call the council, it's ridiculous. And they keep on saying it's going to be fixed. The other thing is that they pointed out that they didn't increase the staff. What they did was they split it. So whereas we had a very efficient council with a good chief executive and good people at the helm, now we don't. I mean, first of all, a lot of them are leaving at a great rate of knots, but also we've only got 50% of their time. And you can phone Eastbourne and they're in Lewes. You can call Lewes and they're in Eastbourne. And anyway, you don't know where you're calling, wherever they happen to pick up the phone. I mean, a wonderful system, I'm sure, but it doesn't work. And the council, particularly in the area of social welfare, has fallen down badly. And nobody is trying to repair it. Nobody. There, yes, you get efficiency here and there. People turn up and they take the garbage. Yeah, those guys are pretty good, actually. And as for our parks and gardens, my goodness me, I think we must have an expert in charge, because the parks are immaculate. The gardens are immaculate. And this is a very pretty town when it comes to that sort of thing. Yes, full marks, full credit where credit is due. But when it comes down to looking after so many issues that we have in a small community, they've been very, very poor. Is it going to get better? Well, much as I'm sounding like a gloom and doom merchant, which I always do, one of the things that really happened was that as a spark of defiance last night in the second half of the council meeting. And when the Muppets put up their hands, whoop, beep, the Muppets on the other side went whoop, whoop. And there were some very close votes. If the Lib Dems hadn't been so silly in the first half, then probably we might have been seeing a council made up in a very different way, which might have been very much more efficient. However, now it's not fair. Isabel Linnington must be given a chance. We'll see what she's going to come up with. She's experienced. She's got 4 years on the council. And with all due respect, is the lady that stood against her is a newbie, had no experience at all. She was a Green. She heads a party which only had one returning councillor. The other 8 are newbies. So perhaps the right choice was made. But nonetheless, you know, in a democracy, we expect democratic process. We expect. We, the people. You know, I read a little bit of somebody having a go at Donald Trump the other day, and it said, instead of we the people, it's us, Donald Trump. Well, it's about time, I think, that we started to have councillors and councils on a local level. We the people. Don't forget that. We the people. And Harvard University have done, I'm reminding those of you who tune in, Harvard University have done a survey which shows that as local media has shrunk, so the council efficiency has worsened, weakened, and so council tax has gone up. Well, we haven't had no criticism of the local papers or the BBC or radio stations or whatever, but they're struggling financially. But hopefully in Lewes, what we are seeing is a resurgence. If we're seeing a resurgence of democracy in the council, we're seeing a resurgence of at least some journalists keeping an eye on them. Because the Lewes Eye, just a splendid organisation, I don't know who runs it, I have no idea, but they are obviously investigative journalists of some note, or some efficiency, if not note, and they are doing a good job in eking out bits and pieces from the council that they would prefer not to have known. Town and County is reflecting some of the, it's not an investigative magazine at all. It's a lifestyle magazine, but it comes across little things, and it helps spread the word. And then there is Mick Symes with his group, his Lewes Present group, and they unveil and unearth all sorts of things because they are the eyes and ears on the ground. And then we, the loudmouth, Mirador Television and Rouser Radio, which will be coming there very soon, we shout the odds. But we shout the odds because we're getting information, and good information, so we're not just shouting, we're passing on the realities of what's happened in Lewes and what is likely to happen if we don't have some sort of watchdog. So we're trying hard to be the watchdog. and we intend to, even though we've got very small resources, but we are making contact with other organisations around the town, around the country rather, who are trying to do the same sort of thing. So if somebody really cocks up in Lewes, there's no reason why they shouldn't be embarrassed when they get on the train to go to London, because some other people have listened to what has happened here and how we've managed to make mistakes and to cock things up. Anyway, I could rabbit on about that all day. Suffice it to say, we've got a new council leader, we've got a new council. We saw a spark of resistance. Let's hope, like de Montfort and the barons, that they go after the ruling family. Now, that would be exciting. While it may make it uneasy for the biggest group, the 19 Conservatives, it will certainly make it a happier place for we, the people. Till tomorrow. Toodle pip.